lesson is going to cover resume writing and the order in which you can write those resumes. So again, resume writing. Now when I talk to military members about writing their resumes, they think, oh, like an EPR. And that is correct. So think of your resume as your civilian EPR. They want numbers, they want results, and they want actions. So these are the things that you need to bring into your resumes. There are different ways to format your resume, and we'll cover those here in the following slides. Chronological, this is your more traditional resume. It starts with your most recent job and it works its way down into the first job that you had for your career. Usually though, you do not cover more than 10 years of your jobs that you list. And also, on all your resumes, don't list every job. Only list the relevant ones to the job in which you're applying for. The experience section is the focus of this resume. Chronological writing is also one used primarily if you're staying in the same profession or the same type of work. The advantages of writing your resume in a chronological order is that it would appeal more to the older, more traditional HR managers. Makes it easier too to understand what you did and what job. The disadvantage, however, is that it's much more difficult to highlight what you do best. This format is rarely appropriate for individuals making a career change. Just so you can see what a layout of a chronological resume would look like, here it is. Again, just like we covered in the previous lessons, do not make your name that large on your resume. But you can kind of see that they've got their name at the top, their contact information. Below that is the paragraph or bullet points of the qualification summary. And then the lower 2/3 of that is the experience portion of the resume. Next, you have your functional resume. This highlights your major skills and accomplishments from the very beginning. It targets the resume into a new direction or a new field. It lifts up from all past jobs the key skills and qualifications that you have that help to prove that you would be successful in the new direction or field in which you're going into. So this would be a great resume to write if you're considering a career change. The actual company names and positions in which you held are looked at more of a subtopic position without any description under each. There are many different types of formats for functional resumes, and we'll take a look at an example here in just a moment. Now again, the functional resume is a great option to choose if you are considering a career change. Also too, if you were a stay-at-home parent for a little bit of time and you were out of the job workforce for a while, this is a good one to choose as well because it doesn't hide the fact that you weren't in the job career fields, but it does kind of help to show why your career fields are so spotty. So if you worked for 2 years and you took a year off, and then you worked 2 years in another field and took 6 months off, this is a resume that would be great for you to write. It's great too for students, for military members, and again for anyone who stayed at home as a homemaker and then decided to return to the job market. It's great as well for individuals who want to make a shift in their career direction. The advantages of writing your resume like this is that it will help you most in reaching for a new goal or direction. is a very effective type of resume, and I would highly encourage you to consider looking into writing your resume in this format. The disadvantage of this is that it is harder for employers to know exactly what you did in which job, and it could be an issue if you have an HR manager who's more on the conservative side. This is an example of a functional resume. Again, your name and contact information at the top, highlights of your qualifications, and then underneath the professional experience, if you'll look here, she's got her management administration skills listed first. Then marketing and promotion skills. And then she's applying for a job in marketing with a tennis focus and sports medication focus. So she has points listed for those as well. Notice too that when you look at your job posting, pay attention to what skill or skills they are most focused on finding. That's the skill that you want to have listed at the top of the professional experience section, and then work your way down. Underneath that, you have the employment history, and this is where this individual has written the years in which they worked at certain organizations or companies and their job titles. Now you'll notice that you don't know what job titles or job duties were applied at each position, but you can see at a quick glance that this individual has a lot of management experience, some marketing experience, and focus too on tennis and sports medication. Below the employment history, you can see the education portion written there. This again is an example of a functional resume. Your third and final type of resume is called a combined resume, and this includes elements of both the chronological and functional formats. There are obvious advantages to this combined approach. It maximizes the advantages of both kinds of resumes and avoids potential negative effects of either type. One disadvantage is that it does tend to be a longer resume. Keep in mind though, your resume needs to be no more than 2 pages. Also, another disadvantage is that accomplishments and skills may have to be repeated in both the functional section and the chronological section. Let's take a look at an example. Again, name and contact information at the top of the page. Underneath that is the job title in which this individual holds, along with some bullet points highlighting what this individual did in that job field. Now, because RN or registered nurse does require a lot of education, licenses, and certifications, this individual chose to put their education on top and then experience below. And that is perfectly acceptable if you are applying for a job in which these aspects are required in order to be considered qualified for the position. Below the education section, she has listed areas of knowledge and skills, and then clinical training, followed by experience. As you write your resume this week, I want you to keep the following items in mind. You want to focus on the employer's needs, not your wants. So think about, as you write your qualifying statement, what kind of employee does this individual want to hire? Keep in mind that the days of writing a cookie cutter resume no longer apply. You cannot write one resume and send it out to 20 employers because you'll get 0 calls. You have to write a resume cover letter tailored to each job posting in which you'll be applying for. So put your time into your resume. If your resume is lacking in any way, it's not going to be considered for the job posting. Do not include a photo with your resume unless it's otherwise asked for. but very rarely are jobs asking for a headshot. Those are reserved for actors, actresses, maybe television news anchors. But your average job is not going to ask for a photo. For those of you who are in the military, do not talk military on your resume. What I mean by that is your name is John Doe. It is not Tech Sergeant John Doe. Not when it comes to your resume and considerations for a civilian job. Now, on some of your jobs, if you were to apply on usajobs.com, these are your government jobs, you could possibly talk military terms there. However, my advice is to completely avoid it. Do not put in added fluff or statements on your resume for HR managers to read. Keep in mind they spend less than 10 seconds per resume, and they have 100 pages at the very minimum to read per job posting. Once you have written your resume, hand it over to a spouse or a friend who is not in the military and see if he or she can understand what it is that you have written. Because most likely the HR manager who will be looking at your resume also has little to no military experience. Tailor your resume. Again, you cannot create one resume and send it out for multiple positions. Each job requires its own resume and cover letter. So the way that you tailor your resume, find the job posting for the position in which you want. Print it off. Now take a highlighter, and you're going to highlight the key words in this job posting. Now you will place those highlighted words into your resume. You do this for two reasons. One, you want to show the company that you understand their lingo and that you speak just like they do. Because that means that you're going to integrate into their company extremely well. And two, the second reason in which you want to include these highlighted words. Many times, HR companies, especially if they are a large company, they have a program, a computer program, that they'll feed your resume into. And they'll have that computer program pick out the top 10, 15, 20 resumes that best match that job posting. So if you don't put these highlighted words into your resume, that computer program may kick your resume out, making it to where a human eye won't even look at it. So include these highlighted words multiple times into your resume. And you find these highlighted words from the job posting for the position in which you're applying for. Now the highlights of your resume need to go above the fold. So what does that mean? Print off your resume. Now do a tri-fold of your resume. The highlights, the most important part of your resume, need to be in that top 1/3. Because this is the section of the paper that HR managers will most likely be able to read within that 10-second time frame. Be sure to mix up your word usage on your bullet points. So instead of saying, I managed blah blah blah, I managed blah blah blah, I managed blah blah blah, you want to mix up that word managed. When you are emailing your resume, if that is a requirement of the job posting, you want to save your resume and send it as a PDF. If you send it as a Word or a page document, you run the risk of the layout of the page being distorted or moved around, and that can come across unprofessional. So if you ever email a resume and cover letter, always do it as a PDF. And proofread, proofread, proofread. Go through every word. Make sure everything is spelled correctly. Make sure everything makes sense. Because if you turn in a resume that's full of grammar mistakes, you're not going to be looked at in a professional way. And the other individuals who did proofread their resumes will be called for an interview before you will. So always proofread those resumes. Final thoughts. You can include links to websites if you've been published or managed a website. I do this for my resumes all the time, especially when I email them, because one of my previous jobs, I actually did manage and write multiple articles for the organization in which I worked for. Use action verbs and not passive phrases. So, resolved questions versus responsible for. Resolved is more of an action verb than responsible for. So use those action words as much as you can. This concludes our lesson on building your resume. Your next lesson that you will be reviewing will cover the cover letters.